So before we jump into the stonework in a future video or two, I thought I'd give you a bit of a background story to how it all began. Now this is probably the wettest day in June when I decided to cut out some of the old concrete, getting ready to pour the footings for the stone leaf that we'll be facing this wall with. Now I've conveniently or stupidly positioned a skip right beside where I'm working, which gave a heavy duty straight edge but was a little bit in the way. That said, it was quite easy to get all the material chucked in there when I was done with it. So what I wanted to do is end up with a fairly clean line so that when we're finished we haven't destroyed the existing strip of concrete where the old little bit of driveway was. I'll get round to replacing that in the future, I'm sure, but for now we needed to cut a decent square strip all the way along, and this would be something that building control would check on the width and the depth and sign it off as part of the garage conversion that we've been doing for the last couple of years. I also left a little bit of the slab just where the door is. That's where I'm going to be doing some infill block work, and just with some lightweight blocks, or it could even be stud work, to tie the stonework to. Then the breaker came out and all of that concrete had to be broken out before we could start digging down. A lot of this is built up ground just where the sub base and things were during the garage works back in the 60s, but we needed to get all of that out and really down to virgin, untouched, undisturbed soil. So with the skip full of all the other excavations that I had going on around the garden, I could get that out of the way, and we did end up going a bit deeper down to the original footings of the other wall, and then I put some stakes in to set our levels. Now don't worry, I haven't given my old cement mixer a facelift. This is actually a new machine. The other one I shared with Dad, and he had some other projects going on. So we decided that we'd end up with one each, and we went halves on a second one, and I just ended up getting the shiny one. So before we got to this point, building control popped round, had a little look over and made a plan of action with us, just to make sure that we were on the right course, and also suggested sticking a bit of steel in there because I had some lying around. It was about 600 deep and about 450 or so wide, which is all it needed to be. It's a non-load bearing wall. It's just the weight of the stone itself. We'll be tying it into the wall, of course, but there's no roof load or anything like that on top of the wall. So I made a start on the concrete. It's a simple all-in ballast, mixing it myself, and it didn't take too long. I had to nip out, grab a bit more cement in the Swedish tank, but once that was back we could throw it in, get mixing, and it took about half a day to get the whole thing done. Now I'd set those stakes at the levels I wanted, and I wanted to make sure that our first course of stone was at the right height, and also that because we're on a slope, I stepped the foundation up a little bit. That just meant that we didn't have loads of stone underground as such, and it just seemed to be the most sensible way to go. This is therefore the top part of that strip, where it's a little bit deeper, and I just put a shuttered sort of section halfway along, which I could remove afterwards. This is the point where it's worth getting everything nice and level. It just sets you off on a good route for your block work or your stonework in this case. And we were in the middle of homeschooling, so a bit of spirit level science and maths and all that sort of stuff. So I got all that sorted out, covered it up, and then we'll be ready to start building in the next kind of day or two after that. So in the final 5 minutes of the day, I decided we'd take out the garage door. I had Will there for half a day, so it made sense to tear it out whilst we had 2 of us. I'd cut it in several places when I was converting the inside of the building, so I knew it would break out relatively easily. And once that was out of the way, then we ended up with basically a timber frame with a membrane on the outside, and we can tie into that with our block work when we're ready to. And then of course the stonework will tie into that. So there are a few options for the infill. We could have just done another timber frame panel and tied into that, but instead I had some lightweight blocks anyway. I ordered a few more, and that's what I used to fill it in, and I'd set the ties as I went up. Now, to start off with, a couple of starter kits that will just help tie the new block work into the old. All of this really is very rough work. If it wasn't, I'd probably be paying someone to do it, because block work and brickwork is something that I need to hone my skill a little bit. This is not going to be pretty, but it's going to get the job done. We can do pretty and rustic and charming when it comes to the stonework, but for this block work, yeah, it is what it is. I then started knocking up a mix for the block work. At this point, I'm spotting a bit of a wobble on that drum, being that it's a brand new mixer. I'm not sure if that's a bit of a concern, but anyway, I haven't noticed it until seeing it on the screen here. With the block work, it's always suggested with lightweight blocks that you use a slightly weaker mix for your mortar, so you could either use lime or a slightly different ratio to achieve that. But really, like most masonry, you want to be using making sure that your mortar is always slightly weaker than the blocks or the stone or the bricks or whatever you're using. So you might not be necessarily using exactly the same mortar for your brickwork or dense concrete blocks as you would for these. But they're nice to work with. I haven't really used them much in the past. I'm not sure I'd rely on them too much for strength, but for this sort of infill, it seemed like a good route to go. As I warned, nothing pretty about this at all, but you can see just getting those starters, those ties in at the right points, and making sure that we're level and plumb, because that's all that really matters. Aesthetics can come second in this instance. So with that amateur block work behind us, or at least in progress, I could start on the stone. Now, the Stone Whisperer, aka Dad, came over. He has spent probably the last 5 years facing various parts of his house in stone, being that it was a pretty ugly bungalow to start with, and he's transformed it by using Cotswold stone. I'm a different level here because I'm using old reclaimed stone from the house. Now, our walls are about 1/2 meter thick, and therefore our stone is very irregular, very big, very undressed and unfaced. So it's a bit of a pain to work with, and if you may have seen on Instagram and Facebook, over the past few weeks I've really been battling with this, and I've ended up buying some stone to mix in with it, which sped things up a little bit. But cutting these down to suit a 140, 150 bed is, just a time-consuming thing, but it's one way to include all this nice limestone from the house back into this wall. So hopefully it'll be worth it in the end, but at this point I'm doubting whether I should have just rendered it and got on with more important and more exciting things. But anyway, little did I know at this point that this would basically take over my life for a few weeks. The stonework is a love or hate relationship, and some days I love it and some days I detest it. But anyway, in a future video I'll go into all the details of DPCs, DPMs, bitumen paint, ties, solid wall ties and all that sort of stuff, and we can make a start on this stonework. I'm almost there in real time. If you want to check out how we're getting on, you can head over to Instagram or Facebook page and you'll be able to see some of the latest photos. This week looks a bit dodgy with the weather, so I'm hiding away in the workshop and up in the office, but hopefully I'll be able to finish off the stone wall by the end of this week and move on to new things. Well, there we go, another project started, another video series out of date and me trying to catch up with editing, but that's always the way here. Lots going on, never enough time to edit and keep everyone updated. But if you do want to keep up to present day, then do head across to the Instagram account, because that has more of our day-to-day stuff on there. The stories and the posts should be more present day. That said, we're aiming to catch up very soon, and we'll be posting a vlog, present day type vlog very soon, which will just basically tell you everything that's on the cards for the next few weeks and months. We've got the roof to start, scaffolding to go up next week, we've got the workshop to start, and a whole host of other stuff we want to cram in before Christmas. Oh, I said the C word. Right, anyway, thank you for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.